I'm so happy to have this chance to meet and speak with Mandi Gardner. Mandi, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you, Todd.
Me too. I just want to let everybody listening know that I was lucky enough to be on your podcast. So I got a chance to meet you already and have a conversation. And so I'm really excited to reciprocate now and have the chance to ask some questions about your yoga journey. In the description, I'll link the to your show so people can you can go down and go to the description and check out Mandi's podcast and hear the questions she asked me. But today I have the pleasure of now asking you a bunch of questions, Mandi. Are you ready?
I think so.
I
I
think
think
so. All
so.
right. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm curious, why yoga? Why, how and why yoga? How did you come into yoga and why yoga?
Well, that's a great question. Yoga sort of pulled me in.
Mm,
Really. I started, in my early 20s just doing yoga class for college, like the community college. That was my very first introduction. And, I really liked yoga because it seemed very accessible. I've never been a big gym rat. And so yoga always seemed softer and less scary than going to the gym and pumping weights. And so it just sort of was a natural progression, but it was being in the yoga room and just having these really beautiful moments of clarity that I was like, gosh, this is really good for me. I need to keep coming back. And so it's just, slow progression.
that's cool. How old were you when you took your first class?
I think I was 21.
Very cool. And were you a university student at any point?
Um, yes and no. I mean, I got my master's degree, or sorry. That's not correct. I got my associate's degree in architectural technology, and then I continued to work towards my bachelor's degree. However, I got pregnant, and I had already been doing hair for over 10 years, and I had a really solid clientele. So I had to just ask myself, what am I going to do with my life? And so yes, I have done college, but I am not working in that industry. I've been
Yeah.
a hairdresser for 25 years. I started when I was 17. And
Wow.
I started thinking, oh, I'm just doing this temporarily so I can put myself through college, which I did for a number of years. And then I kind of had to get to this point where it's like, well, gosh, like I am paying my bills with this and I really enjoy it and it's flexible. And do I want to start from ground zero and start a new career, or do I want to keep doing hair? And at that point in my career, I really wanted to keep doing hair. So that was my choice.
Very cool. And so you're then obviously practicing throughout your career path, I'm gathering.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yoga, it was very gentle. I would go once in a while when I was younger. When I was younger, I struggled with a lot of addiction and alcoholism. I was partying a lot. And so yoga was occasionally, right?
Mhm.
And then when I got more serious about my healing journey is when I found Bikram's yoga and hot yoga, and I really dived deep into that. Really loved that hot yoga. But after and I only did that once a week for about 10 years. And that was the beginning of me really starting to heal because I was an alcoholic at that time. I was really struggling with, just addictive behaviors and so the once a week hot yoga was this, deep cleansing of all that crap that I was putting into my body.
Yeah.
But when I really started wanting to get better and I wanted my yoga practice. It's like, gosh, I really want to get stronger. Like, how am I, and then I had a girlfriend and she was doing this crazy yoga move. And I'm like, how are you doing that? Where are you learning that,
Mm.
because I was doing the 26 and 2, right? And so for 10 years, I was only exposed to 26 postures and two breathing exercises. And so I was like, wait, how do I learn that, So then I really started looking for a more advanced yoga teacher. And I live in the state of Utah. And so I was looking for the most experienced teacher in Utah. And I found them, and they happened to be an Ashtanga yoga teacher. And this teacher had been to India like 8 times by the time I had met this person. And so I was like, gosh, this person is the closest to the root that I'll ever find in Utah. And so I really kind of switched gears and switched away from Bikrams, and I went and started doing Ashtanga. And for a long time, I did both. I did both. I found the hot yoga, the Ghosh yoga, the 108, which is like the advanced series. I was doing that. And then I was also doing the Mysore room Ashtanga. I did both of those for quite a long time. And then I really kind of recognized that if I really wanted to, for my personal body, to get to the physical goals that I had wanted to achieve, I really needed to stick with one practice. And I had so many realizations in the Mysore room that were so different than the Bikram's room. One in a Mysore room, yes, it's warm, but it's not hot, right? And you're creating your own internal heat. And so for me, there was much more physical transformation. Like I actually got stronger. I was actually seeing some muscle definition that I had never seen before. And so and then there was also this mental part of it. The mental part, I mean, honestly, the physical part it's nice, right? Yeah, it's nice. You do yoga and you get a little more fit. Like, sure, who doesn't like to look better in their jeans, right? But what really got me back on my mat over and over was what it did for my mind, what it did for my because I experienced so much trauma as a kid, I emotionally dysregulate really easily. I get triggered really, really easily with certain things, right? And I started to learn more about this in the Mysore room because I was able to really tap in and really observe myself in these situations and observe where my mind was going. And it was just a little bit different, right, than the Bikram's room.
Yeah, it is very different, right? I had a similar experience where I was in the Bikram room and eventually found Ashtanga, practiced both, and then eventually gave up the Bikram and went full Ashtanga style. So it's so cool to meet somebody else that had a similar experience.
Nice. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Did you ever have a moment where you felt like because Bikram had this attitude of like my yoga is the only yoga, and the Ashtanga world, from my experience, was kind of like, look, we clearly are the best style of yoga, and the other ones aren't really all that great, especially Bikram because he's crazy and it's hot. Did you ever feel like when you go to the Bikram studio, you couldn't talk about your Ashtanga life? And when you went to the Ashtanga studio, you kept the Bikram life quiet, or were you talking
Yeah,
about it in each
not
place?
necessarily. I think I would talk about it, but people weren't receptive. People are
Mm,
very, they like what they like, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And so then you currently are a yoga teacher, correct?
hmm
And you have
Yeah.
your own yoga studio.
Say that again.
And you have your own yoga studio.
No, no. I teach for two different studios. One is just about to open, and the other one I've been teaching for a while. It's the Front Climbing Gym, which is sounds funny. It's a climbing club, but they actually have the largest, well, the only Ashtanga yoga program in Utah. And they
Interesting.
just happen to have because there's only two authorized teachers in Utah, and they both work for the Front. And because the Front is primarily a mountain climbing club, the yoga is actually really financially affordable.
Mm,
And so for people who are really into yoga, that monthly membership is a really affordable option. And so yeah, but so it does make it tricky if you want to try Ashtanga just because in Utah, it's not as accessible. And that's honestly something I'm trying to work on, is to make it more accessible and not so, have to have a membership to join sort of thing.
got it. Got it. Yeah, it's so interesting, right? I think Ashtanga overall is a harder style to find. Would you agree?
Uh, Yes, I would agree. Yeah. And then going back to what you were asking me about Bikrams and Ashtanga, you kind of, asked me a different question, but what I thought you were going to maybe ask me was, so with Bikrams, it's very rigid and it's very much like push, 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 heat, 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 right?
Yeah.
And I'll say that like in my personal like trauma healing journey, in the beginning, we kind of punish ourselves, because we are in this mentality of like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And so I gotta prove myself and I gotta push, 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 and I gotta heat, 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 right? And so it was almost kind of it's not really what yoga is supposed to be about, or what, that's not, it lost the meaning, right? And
Yeah.
then going into a Mysore room, suddenly I was offered a choice. I was offered an option of, here's this yoga cheat sheet. We're going to start with the sun salutations. Let me show you how to do these, right? And then if you're still feeling ready, we can go through the fundamental asanas. And if you're feeling done, then go ahead and finish with the finishing sequence. And so there was more adaptability for me and like where I was at in the day or where my body was at. And I really liked the piece of like being able to make a choice for myself, really. And this is what I really try to help other women know when they are choosing yoga, and why I advocate for Ashtanga yoga, because it does get a bad rap for being really rigid and hard. And I know that that's been your experience because you've been to India. But my experience in the Mysore room is that you really do get to take ownership of your personal practice, and you do get to make those choices, and you get to, sit in the discomfort and choose whether you stay there or whether you let go and move out of it. And when it comes to like healing from trauma, like super important for us to feel empowered. And, in the Bikram's room, when like if there was too snappy of a like do this, do that, I would get triggered in class and my mind would be like, oh my God, and I'd be like so distracted because I'd be so upset, like,
Okay.
toes together, heels together, it was like, oh, so it was very militant and very like, oh my gosh. But I don't know. When I was in it, I felt like, oh, this is great, But then moving, like finding Mysore and being able to like actually connect with my breath and actually make choices for myself and actually connect to my body, it was a totally different experience.
Cool.
Not having the music to distract you or the mirrors to distract you.
Mhm.
You're actually really required to focus inward. And when we're healing, either trauma or addiction, like that is a really important piece that we need to master.
Agreed. What was the evolution from the time that you were a student to becoming a teacher?
Good question. What was the evolution? Meaning like
Like meaning,
time-wise?
yeah, just like so you're taking Ashtanga classes and you loved it. And then was there like this opportunity to like do an apprenticeship, or was it that it was a
Yeah.
specific like 200-hour training, or what was your first foray into thinking I would like to be a yoga teacher, and then the journey to actually get to that point?
Well, the first yoga teacher training I did was in 2014, and that was not Ashtanga. It was just a traditional like Hatha Vinyasa, and I did learn a tremendous amount. And it was a 500 hours, so very long. It was about 9 months, very in depth, and I really appreciated that training. It's always so nice to be in yoga teacher training, just to focus on yourself and practice and do all the things. But um, I, if I'm being honest, I was still really struggling with alcoholism at that time. And I was still really stuck on this idea that I wanted to have a healthy relationship with alcohol. I was, because that's what society trains you to think is like, oh, well, you should be able to have a healthy relationship with alcohol and be able to go have a few drinks and then, but the truth is I didn't have that ability. But anyway, I've lost my train of thought.
No
Help me
worries.
out.
Well, that makes me think then what was, well, let's go back to the
Oh,
original.
oh, the yoga teacher
And then in
path.
relation to Ashtanga, teaching Ashtanga, did you get invited by the two authorized teachers to help hold down classes for them, or did they kind of mentor you?
So yeah, so I obviously started attending the Mysore room and the lead primary classes. So those two specific teachers, one specifically that I see the most. And there was a yoga teacher training that became available. And I had talked to her about it, and she really, she was really supportive. And I told her how, at the time I was really kind of financially struggling and I didn't know if I could make it work. And she came back to me a few days later and said, "Hey, I got a grant for you if you want to do it." And I felt so supported, and I felt really good to, know that like something that I really wanted to do. And they saw that, potentially they saw value in me. And so that was great that I was able to do that.
Mm.
And so, yeah, that yoga teacher training was very much Ashtanga influenced, but not necessarily. I mean, I think she's really funny about, being certified Ashtanga because you can't really do that, right? Because if you want to be authorized, you have to go to India. I did have the opportunity to do like a 1 week intensive online yoga clinic with Tim Feldman from Miami.
Yeah.
And that was incredible. He helped give me so many tips to help, at that time I was working on Ekapada Shirshasana. So he was helping me, get my leg behind the head. And then I was able to go practice with Sharathji in Miami last year for 2 weeks. And so I got to do Mysore and then led primary with Sharath Joyce. And that was such an amazing experience. I was so grateful to practice with him because it really took away all of these crazy ideas that I had. You think that you're gonna because you're like, oh, I gotta go impress the teacher. I really want to be authorized. And so he's got to see, like, I gotta, show off all my skills. I gotta do my best, right? But that's really not how it is. He's so intelligent. He's been around this practice his entire life, and he can just look at you and look how you move in the practice to see like whether you've been practicing regularly or not. Like he's just so intuitive. And before you go too far, he's like, "No, no, no, too far, too far." And so it really allows you to like, "Oh, I don't have to push myself. I literally just have to be in the practice and connect to my breath and do the thing," right? Like it took away all of these crazy like competitive ideas that I had totally away, because he doesn't even really allow it. He's like, "No, no, no, don't go that's too far. You don't go that far."
You right,
I was like,
right.
"Yep."
That's cool. It is funny the stuff that we build up in our head before we actually come into contact with what it is that we think we are really wishing and hoping for. What
Yeah.
did you, and then at that point, when did you start teaching Ashtanga classes?
So it's a good question. So right now at the front, I teach Vinyasa and soft and slow. And they are the only real Ashtanga program in Utah. And so there's a lot of teachers that want to teach. And so so I'm just on the sub list as far as teaching Mysore. I do sub regularly, which I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful whenever I get the chance to go into the Mysore room. But I have been approached by a new studio that's close to my home that wants me to offer some Ashtanga classes, and I'm
Cool.
really excited about that
Mm.
because as far as I know, there's only one or two studios that really offer the Mysore style practice. And when I was introducing it to the yoga, like the leader, the yoga teacher manager, and then also the owner, they honestly had never heard of it. They have no idea what it is. But because of how I've explained it to them, they're like, "Well, it sounds really great. So we're excited to try it." So that just goes to show like how unique it is. It's very special. When I talk about self-led style yoga, people are like, what? You know, it's just very unique.
Yeah.
But I am very excited to be able to do that. That's going to start in December. And so I'll be able to teach Mysore and also lead primary 2 days a week. So that's just the beginning, you know. And then now I teach on YouTube. So I have YouTube videos and, I am a newbie and I am, I'm getting I'm gaining more skills all the time when it comes to these videos that I'm creating. But I do
Yes.
have like a 30-minute Ashtanga video, and then I also have a full primary series on my YouTube channel.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, so and then my next one I'd really like to do is an intro to Mysore. That's for someone who has no idea what Mysore is, and so part of it will be led, and then part of it I'll allow you space to work through it at your own. And so that'll be a video I look forward to making in the future.
Well, that's cool. You spoke about trying to create a healthy relationship with alcohol, but I don't want to assume, but it sounds to me like you've made the full break and have gone sober. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
What was
So
the catalyst there? How did you what was the turning point to make you feel like, okay, I'm going to get really serious about this?
it's a good question because it takes a long time. Um, I I wanted to, like, I really was committed to having a healthy relationship with alcohol. And so I would take off my birthday month. I would take off the whole month of drinking to really prove to myself, like, I'm not an alcoholic. See, I took the whole month off, right? I did that for 5 years. And so every year on my birthday month, I would take off the month, and it would prove to myself I was not an alcoholic. But so when I really, in this whole time, I'm still doing yoga all the time. And when I really committed to Ashtanga yoga was February of 2018. And that was when I decided, you know what? I am really committed to this practice. I'm only going to do this practice and I'm going to do it 4 days a week at a minimum and try to do it more than that if I can. And then what happened was in about 9 months later, I had a repressed memory come up from when I was a child, from when I was 4, a very specific event that created what I call a lock on my throat chakra. It taught me that I was not safe to express myself or to express my emotions. I was also not safe to like show emotion. I had gotten in trouble. I got scolded for crying over my baby sister who had passed away. And so that really imprinted me, right? And so I had completely forgotten about this very traumatic experience up until 9 months after sobriety, like being sober. So my brain was finally having an opportunity to heal, right? And so then these repressed memories were coming up, and that was really the beginning of me recognizing, like, oh, this is deeper than I thought, right?
Yeah.
And I really, I had the recognition finally when I saw a friend of mine who ordered a White Russian, drink half of it, and then push it away. And he was done. And I was like, huh, I would
Mhm.
never do that. I would literally never do that. I would never push away a drink. I would always finish it and I would always get another one. And that's when I realized, like, I'm an alcoholic. Like, I don't have a stop button, right?
Yeah.
And so it took a long time. Like, I was literally sober off of alcohol for 9 months before I realized or before I could admit to myself that, dang, I actually have a problem, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was because when I originally quit drinking, I had only made the commitment for 1 year. It was me and my therapist had decided I was going to take 1 year off. And then after the year, I could reapproach the idea of having alcohol in my life.
Yes.
But thank goodness at 9 months sober, I was like, oh shit, I'm actually an alcoholic. So I actually need to never go back there again because I'm moving forward and I know I don't need to go backwards. And so, yeah, me getting sober was really the catalyst for me wanting to share this practice that has profoundly healed my brain and my nervous system and my mind and my spirit and my body, right? Like it really has impacted my life in such a tremendous way. And so it's really important to me to teach it to other people.
Oh, that's cool, Mandy. That's very super inspirational. Have you been able to stay sober since then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
Thank you for
you,
asking.
right? Well, it is an accomplishment. It's an accomplishment. Did you, do you utilize help from the 12 step program? And is it okay for me to ask that, or is that something that's like an anonymous thing where you're not able to?
No,
Oh,
Todd, that's a really good question. I am not going to have your traditional answer. AA didn't work for me. I I even read the 12 Steps in the Buddha. There's a book, it's like the Buddhists' view of the 12 Steps.
yeah.
Now, like I was raised, so I'll just say like my backstory, I'm for a long time was pretty anti-religion just because I was raised in a very extremely dogmatic religion. And so then I kind of went the opposite where I was anti. Um,
Can I interject and ask if you're in Utah,
yeah.
was it Mormonism?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I grew up Mormon and I
Understood.
left when I was 17 when I made my first gay friend. And I realized, oh, that's not a choice. That is just how you are. And so I had realized that everything I had been taught was wrong and incorrect. So I left at 17, but that's a whole nother story and that had a whole nother can of worms to it. But excuse me.
No worries. No worries. That's so I don't want to stop you. I want you to keep going, but I am curious to learn more about in the Mormon religion. If you step away, are you allowed to come back? Or I know from what I understand in some religions, it's almost like they give you a little grace period to go away. You can come back once, but if you ever leave again, it's kind of like you're ostracized.
Sure, they can they'll
Is
totally let you back.
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely they'll let you
Yeah.
back because
Okay.
they want your 10% tithing.
All right. All
Just kidding. I'm gonna have some smart ass remarks. Uh,
I appreciate
I
that though. No, I know. Well, it's hardcore. I think the smartass remarks are important because it gets down to the nitty gritty of some of the what the behind the scenes of what.
Yeah, I'll never go back
Okay,
ever.
understood. Okay.
But I am very respectful because I still have family members who are
Yeah.
loyal believers,
Yeah.
and so I'm very respectful. But you know,
Did that
that's
push you in the opposite direction toward a more atheistic sort of philosophy?
I've always been spiritual. I've always believed in a higher power. I've always believed that there's some greater energy. I, however, don't know if it looks like a person or if it looks like the universe or if it's just a feeling of love. Like I'm okay not having the answer. And like, that's okay with me. Like I don't have to fill in the gaps with
Yeah.
answers. Like it's okay
Cool.
that it's
Cool.
the unknown for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate. Excellent. So I wanted to kind of get us back on the thread where I interrupted you. You left the church and you got sober and oh yeah,
Mhm.
AA. And you were gonna
Oh, AA.
traditional answer,
So
I don't have.
So with AA, there is a point or a piece of it that says that you have to admit to yourself that you're powerless. And that's the piece that I'm not okay with because I'm not powerless. I'm not powerless to my addiction or my alcoholism. I was able to, overcome it. And so I don't know, I'm sure people can disagree with me, but I don't like that terminology. I don't like being feeling like I am powerless because then where's the motivation to get sober and to get better? I also don't think it's productive or good to always go down the old rabbit holes. When you're in AA, unfortunately, and I have gone to AA, but I didn't go very often. I just went a couple of times and then it wasn't for me. Um, what was my train of thought going? But
Just the whole idea of going down the rabbit hole, like maybe dredging
Oh,
up constant, like this is my
so
problem.
constantly thinking about why we have the trauma, like constantly thinking about now, I obviously there's such a valuable piece in acknowledging like this happened and this was not okay. This wasn't good, right? But always continually living there doesn't help us move forward. It doesn't help us create new neural pathways towards creating new communication behaviors towards having healthy relationships, right? So I'm a big advocate of focusing on the positive, focusing on how we can shift gears to be healthier, to communicate our feelings more effectively, to maybe identify our emotions a little bit more clearly. First, like allow ourselves to feel our feelings and then is this what I'm feeling? And then to be able to express it, like there's so many skills that we could focus on learning to help better our lives versus focusing on the past. Now, I do understand like that is part of the process, but at some point we need to evolve forward where we're no longer dwelling on the past and because when it comes to the neural pathways and trauma, like the neural pathways that we think about all the time are these gaping rivers, and because they're these gaping rivers, we go down there really easily. We think about it really easily because we've been there a ton. And the only way to we can quite literally shrink our neural pathways by not using that neural pathway, right? But that means we need to be strengthening a different one, which means we got to focus on the positive, right? And so I'm a big advocate of really focusing on, what's going to help us, like what are the symptoms that we're dealing with and what can we do to help with these symptoms and not necessarily like digging in the weeds all the time, if that
Understood.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I get it. What then would you attribute your success to? I'm guessing obviously yoga and then maybe even more specifically Ashtanga yoga. But if you had to really pinpoint some of the key factors of why you're able to stay sober and be successful in what you're doing, what will you attribute that to beyond your own power, like not powerlessness, but you made mention of the fact that you're acknowledging that you do have the power to make change and you're recognizing that. Can you explain a few more details for me, please?
Yeah. So it's a very good question. Healing is such a complex thing. It's so complex. And the beautiful thing about yoga is that you're kind of unconsciously healing. You don't recognize it because you don't know, like, oh, that felt really good. But there's a deeper level of healing that's happening. And I really genuinely attribute my yoga practice to healing my brain in a way that I could actually be successful and moving forward and continuing to make good choices. I really do. Um, but yoga, it heals us physically and obviously emotionally and mentally in this like physical way. But the other real catalyst for me, and I do talk about this on my YouTube channel quite a bit, is learning DBT skills or dialectical behavior therapy skills. And in my healing process, so I got sober and I was so excited to, just focus on all this positive stuff, focus on my family, focus on raising my son. I had decided to stop dating. It was like too much of an energy suck. And I made the decision to, well, me and my mother were both looking to purchase a home at the same time. And her and I decided to do it. We decided to purchase a home together because wouldn't that be so great to have grandma around in the last few years of raising my son and we could support each other? We're both single women, right? Now, little did I know, my mom suffers something that's called borderline personality disorder. And I didn't know that until I moved in with her. And moving in with her and discovering that, anyone who's familiar with borderline personality disorder knows that that is a lot. There's a lot to it. Her behaviors were really hurtful, and it was re-triggering a lot of trauma from my childhood that I wasn't expecting or no, I didn't realize. And anyway, in discovering that she has borderline, that is where I found DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy. So it's typically in the world of psychology, it's typically used for people who suffer from BPD or borderline. But my symptoms were more in alignment with complex PTSD or CPTSD. And I still found that these DBT skills were quite literally like what has changed my life in such a positive way. It literally like catapulted me forward because it gave me real life skills. And I call them fundamental life skills because when you grow up with parents who are dysfunctional, like where the heck do you learn how to have a functional relationship, right? And the DBT skills, the dialectical behavior, because the dialectic, right? It's because a trauma brain can go into this black and white thinking really easily, right? And this catastrophizing thinking of like, oh, I'm triggered. And, oh my gosh, it's the worst. And everything's the worst. And this is, I'm going to have to move out. Or like it just goes to this like it's a catastrophe, right? And the dialectic is allowing us to come to the middle path, allowing us to believe that two seemingly opposing ideas are true at the same time. So something that would trigger me before is if my partner was mad at me. My partner got mad at me, I immediately was like dysregulated. I couldn't handle it. I didn't have the skills to handle it, right? And then the dialectic is okay. So understanding, because the trigger is like your mind is reeling on an idea that is a lot of times incorrect, right? And so trying to navigate, well, what's reality? So understanding that, like, okay, so my husband, it was my boyfriend at the time. He's my husband now. My boyfriend at the time, he can be mad at me, right? And he can still love me, right? And those two things can be true at the same time. But my trauma brain would go immediately like, oh, he's mad at
Mhm.
me. Oh my gosh, we're breaking up. Oh, it's the end of the world. And so being able to calm, like have that ability to pause and to analyze, okay, what's going on here? And is that correct? And, trying to think of the dialectic of like, okay, wait, so he can be mad at me and he can still love me. I hope that's a good explanation. But the DBT really is like profoundly changed my life. And that's why I started a YouTube channel to start sharing it with everyone because I don't think it's talked about enough. I think it should be taught in high school and junior high because these are really fundamental, so important. It helps us to develop our emotional intelligence and it helps us to have these difficult conversations without getting triggered, because when we recognize that we're getting triggered, that's the opportunity for us to like, oh, take a step back, do some self-care, right? And understanding that when we're in our triggered mind, we quite literally cannot access our rational mind. And so if we know we can't access the rational mind, we know we have to, okay, we got to calm ourselves down, do some self-care. So that's been the biggest thing for me. Yeah, that's been the
Oh,
biggest thing.
that's amazing, Mandy, on a couple of fronts because, well, first, I just want to try to understand and clarify when you said, so you grew up with your mom, but then obviously you weren't living with your mom, and then you had your son, and then you had a moment where you thought, let's reunite and be together. But then you said that's when you said you didn't know that your mom had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. So I'm thinking that your mom had this borderline personality disorder throughout your entire childhood, but then she received the diagnosis maybe later when you weren't living with her. So then upon
She's
moving back in, that's when she brought this information to the table, which I just got to hear more about that because
She wasn't diagnosed until after we had moved in together. And it was her going to her therapist because unfortunately she tends to go through therapists really quickly because
Mm.
when they tend to start seeing the real her, she gets scared as like, oh, they're not the right one. But so it's a good question. I grew up thinking that my mom was bipolar. I thought that she had, extreme depression, mood swings, right? But the thing with bipolar is that they have these incredible mood swings over long periods of time. So maybe 3 days or 3 weeks, right? But with borderline, they will have a range of emotions, anywhere from angry, happy, sad, laughing, contemptible, right? All within an hour. Like it'll be like, it's quite the roller coaster. And and essentially it's, yeah, I won't go on anyway. But yeah, so I always knew that like there was something that she struggled with, but I didn't. And then for 20 years, I didn't live with her. And we had kind of this, I didn't realize, but we had a pretty superficial relationship, right? And it was very like, oh, how are you? Oh, da da da, you know. And I did go to her quite a lot for advice on relationships, which looking back was not good. You know, she's been divorced 4 times and there's a reason. And, you know, so I started recognizing like, oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't ask her for advice, you know. Anyway, it was so I've always known there was something, right? But then actually moving in with her and actually seeing these behaviors in real time where she was acting like she was treating me as if I was treating her like a monster. Like she was acting like she was scared of me because I was the monster. And I was like, wait, I don't understand. Because she's the one acting all strange. Like she's the one being really cold and saying hurtful things. And then, like, you know, not wanting to spend time with me. And I asked her, like, hey, you want to come up for dinner? No, I'm fine. Like, okay, you know, and so I just was really confused. And my husband now, who we were just dating at the time, and I'm so grateful he was, you know, saw the light in me and was patient during this process. But, you know, I would cry to him and I don't know why she's acting like this. I don't know why she's treating me like this. Like, this is so strange. And he's like, gosh, have you ever heard of borderline personality disorder? And I was like, no, I
Oh,
haven't. And
wow.
so I looked it up and I was like, well, let's look it up, give it a Google. And sure enough, sure enough, so there's 9 characteristics. And if you have 5 of the characteristics, you're thought to have the disorder.
Mm.
My mom does have varying degrees of all 9 characteristics. And so it is, you know, it's beyond a doubt that she has, you know, what is considered borderline personality disorder. I do think that's a terrible name. I think um, what's the other one? Dysregulation
Well,
disorder is more
before
appropriate.
before that diagnosis, it was multiple personality. I think prior to borderline, um, it
I
was
know
in the 80s. I feel like from what I understand, it was the diagnosis was that somebody would be called multiple personality because there's this like I'm this character, and then real quick there's a
it's
flip into
similar but
this.
different.
So it
And
is different.
DID, dissociative identity disorder, is what they
Uh,
refer to as multiple personality disorder now.
Thank you. Thank you for
But
clarifying that. And that's where I was getting confused right now because I was remembering that they changed that name and I apologize for
no,
confusing.
that's okay. And
Thank you.
borderline does it, so it seems like she's got these multiple personalities to me as this outsider, but
Yeah.
that's not really what it is. Unfortunately, what it really is that she's always in a reactionary mode. She's always in this like low level, like she's so traumatized that her nervous system is always in this like low level fight or flight.
Mhm.
And just one little thing is going to send her off of the rockers, right? And so she's just, we would call her an emotional burn victim. So if you barely touch her, she's searing pain, right? And so that's like, so that's the best way I can describe it. But it's not necessarily that they have multiple personalities, even though when she gets dysregulated and she speaks those really unkind words, it definitely seems like she's another person. But it's not coming from being another identity. It comes from this trauma-based reactionary place, if that makes
Wow,
sense.
it does. How are you currently navigating keeping your health and having a relationship with her?
Good question. So we only lived together for 2 years and then we sold the townhome because obviously living together was not good for either of us. And as much as I wanted it to be. But so she lives by herself and that's exactly what she needs to do. She needs to have her own space. And for a long time, I thought I would just disown her. And I know that sounds harsh, but I didn't have the skills to handle it before. But once I learned the dialectical behavior therapy skills, I had this whole tool belt of skills that I could use. And so now I'm able to have a somewhat healthy relationship with her. It will never be the relationship that I desired in my heart long ago, that nurturing mother relationship. That's just unfortunately not something she's capable of doing. But now that I have understood, what she deals with and who she is, and I just have a different appreciation now. I have more compassion for her because before I didn't understand, and now I do.
That's
And
amazing.
so it's allowed me to have a relationship with her, but in a very safe way. Because I've learned how, because part of the DBT is me learning how to have healthy boundaries. And so I've learned how to have healthy boundaries so that I can have a relationship with her in a way that supports, that protects me, right? And there's more to it, but
Oh my gosh, I'm so thankful to hear all this. I've grown up in a similar environment, so I can really understand what you're talking about. How about now as a parent? And I know this is probably a little bit of a more difficult question because it requires us to be very honest with like how we parent our own children. Do you feel like you've been successful at breaking some of that trauma sort of parenting? When you've experienced trauma your whole life and then you become a parent, wow, now you're the magnifying glasses come out. And then you start becoming aware of what's happened to you. You're becoming aware of what you're actually doing with your own children or child. And this sense of responsibility becomes intense because you realize you got to do the work and now you're responsible to not leave those same marks on the next generation.
Mhm.
How have you been able to navigate that scenario?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
Well, just being cognitively aware is huge, right? I really tried like to do my best all the time. I've always been so driven to be a good mom. And but I said I stopped drinking in 2018. He was 10. And so when he was younger, I kind of could get away with it, right? But he was starting to get to an age where he was starting to like recognize and starting to notice. And I started just really feeling guilty, like mom guilt of like, gosh, like I don't want to just have this, blurry idea, like this blurry remembrance of the holidays because I've drunk myself, the whole time. And really asking myself like, well, what kind of mom do I want to be for him? My son is the number one reason that I have really been dedicated to getting better. I will say that I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect human. I definitely made mistakes. But the thing about me that's a little bit different, is that him and I can have really open conversations. And I have been very honest with him. And I said, that thing that happened where I got really upset because there were like, so one specific example, he was taking the garbage out and he spilled coffee grounds on the white carpet. And I was so upset. I immediately got triggered. I immediately just like started yelling and screaming. And I was so upset. And I was picking up the coffee grounds. And then to see how it affected my son, I just was immediately like, oh shit. Oh no, I've just done it, right? I've just done it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I have totally screwed up, right? And I've been that terrible, crazy mom at times. And the difference between, because we're not perfect, right? And this is me being super honest. But the difference is that I can call myself out. I can say, honey, I did that and that was wrong. I shouldn't have acted that way. I am so sorry. I will do my best to never do that again. And I have, obviously drinking, it makes it really hard. You can get triggered really easily when you're in the bouts of alcoholism. But being able to get sober, being able to learn DBT skills, I don't get triggered nearly as often. And if I do, I have the skills to deal with them so they don't affect the people around me in a really negative way. So my son, has definitely had a different upbringing, but it has been a lot of work, a lot of work.
Oh man, I appreciate your honesty, Mandy. Thank you so much for being open like this and actually telling it like it is. If I'm curious and or listeners curious about how to integrate DBT skills in our lives, my life, what would you recommend? Is there a book? Is there a program? Do you have to be going to a therapist? What is the route that one can take to integrate this in?
It's a good question. So Marsha Linehan is the woman who created DBT, and she does have a book, and I think it's called Living a Life Worth Living or Creating a Life Worth Living, something like that. Marsha Linehan is her name. That is a great starting point. The thing is, when we're talking about healing from trauma and we're talking about learning new skills, this isn't something that you can take like a 2-hour course and have it like impact you in a positive way. Like obviously it'll be beneficial, but for this to really change your life, you need to like have an opportunity to learn it and then to integrate it into your life and then to go back and talk about how you integrated it into your life and how you could continue to be better. And so the program that I learned was a 12-week program. I will say, so because we've talked about borderline personality disorder, if there's anyone who is a family member of someone who suffers borderline personality disorder or dysregulation disorder, I would check out Family Connections of NEA BPD. Family Connections is a free 12-week course that teaches family members of those who suffer from BPD how to how to deal with it, how to have a better relationship with this person, how to understand and speak to this person in a way that you guys could have a potentially a healthier relationship. And maybe the best thing is that you step away from that person, maybe not. But these skills offer you an avenue of not having to totally cut off that relationship. So
Mm.
that's a really good resource. That's where I learned it originally. And then I started volunteering for that nonprofit to teach the DBT skills in the courses. And I co-hosted courses with a gentleman whose daughter was diagnosed BPD. I will say that his daughter was diagnosed BPD, but after 2 years of dialectical behavior therapy, she no longer qualified. So
Mm.
even though in the world of psychology they say BP, borderline is not curable, that is not my experience. My experience is that I have seen an 18-year-old who turned, 22-year-old who had an intensive 2-year program who no longer qualifies being borderline. And so,
It
I
works.
just, yeah, it works. It works. And so I do, I think that these diagnoses are helpful, but I also think that they can keep you in a box. And so
Yep.
but Family Connections was really great.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Thank you for mentioning all those resources. I wrote them down. I'll do my best to incorporate those links into the description so people can click and find easy. And Mandy, you have your website, which is holisticevolutionshala.com. And you said that you offer a free resource that people can sign up and
Yeah.
access
It's
to the Daily Calm. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. So I've created what's called the daily calm practice. So it's like my own little system of how you can set up yourself for success when it comes to staying emotionally regulated and expressing yourself and also taking care of yourself. So the daily calm practice worksheet, there's 4 steps and it's the calm, CALM, and it's create a self-care schedule and set intentions. The A part is address and reduce vulnerabilities. L is learn what they don't teach you in talk therapy. And then M is master for daily practice. So it's a really great little worksheet. And if you are struggling with any of the symptoms of trauma, so addiction, depression, hypervigilance, trust issues, relationship issues, I promise you'll find value. So you can get that on my website. It's holisticevolutionshala.com and it will just say get the free workbook and you can click the button and get it. And I put a lot of heart and soul into it and I really know that there's value. So check it out and tell me what you think.
I definitely will for sure. And everybody listening, please also send Mandy a little note to let her know if you enjoy this episode and just give us some feedback. We really appreciate it. I'm so thankful, Mandy, to have this opportunity. I do have more questions for you, and so maybe we can do a part two
Okay,
sometime soon.
I'd love
And
that.
that would be amazing. And I've really enjoyed the opportunity of being able to be on your show. And I'm so thankful to have this chance to have you here and being honest about some of these challenges that we've faced growing up and now trying to integrate and move forward in a more healthy way. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with as inspiration and or motivation beyond what you've shared in the attempt to close our conversation?
Oh, well, thank you for listening and being interested. It means a lot to me to be able to share my story because, I know that there's others out there who are struggling with similar things that can really benefit from, my past
Absolutely.
experiences and knowing that there are real tools that can help. But yeah, I mean, basically you don't know what you don't know. And this healing journey is an educational path as well, like it's not just connecting to our breath and practicing yoga, but it's actually quite literally like learning new skills. When we have a lot of trauma in our childhood, like we didn't learn some of those. And so we have to learn them and that's okay. And so just get curious and get excited and hopefully this will inspire you to ask a little bit more.
Well, thank you, Mandy. Well said. And
Oh,
I really look forward to next time getting a chance to continue this conversation. And once
awesome.
again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.